Hello and welcome to episode 11. And I thought today we'd have a look at the differences between portable radios. And it's no particular sort of this one is best or this one is the worst one, because in actual fact all the radios that I've got to show you today are actually quite good. And I've even collected some examples of more vintage radios as well, so that you can compare what the modern ones and what the old ones would do and see if that makes some sort of sense. So what I've got, a collection of current and old radios. And this one, this one's probably, I think, 1981 or thereabouts. I bought this. Still got it. And you know, the silly thing is, it still works absolutely fine. It's got all the usual features that you'd see on a modern radio, really. It can scan, so you can put memories in. You can scan your favourite channels. It's got a button. If I push that, it goes straight to channel 16. That's a feature that practically every radio has. And it's really useful because in most cases, you're probably going to be listening on channel 16, the calling and safety channel. So a button that takes you there no matter where you were is a fairly great feature. This particular one, well, over the years, I don't think it's been looked after very well. It's still got the icon sticker on the back. It's a bit green around the gills. Presumably at some stage it must have got a bit damp. And this thing is an IC M5 icon. So, I mean, at the moment, we're probably getting on for 42, 43 years. It's still working. I've been hiring radios since about the early 80s, and I've been selling them properly for probably getting on for 20 years now. And I don't honestly think there is such a thing as an unreliable radio. There are certainly bad radios, and I've come across quite a lot over the years. And what makes them bad is usually that they're too hard to work. I did pick up another radio that I found on the shelf this morning. And for the life of me, I can't remember how to program it to make it do things like scanning and all the things that you would come to expect from a radio. So it's not a bad radio from the point of reliability. It's just a horrible radio to use. And the problem with marine band radios is that there are so many people who've got different requirements. Different requirements. Well, let's think about the most casual user of marine band radios. What are they doing? They're looking for a radio that probably will spend most of its life switched off. And then they want to turn it on and call for help. Now, radios, of course, use batteries, and we all know that batteries go flat in the most inopportune moments. This one is a brand new icon. Got it out of the box for this video. I went to turn it on. Nothing. Battery's completely flat. I usually make sure that the batteries in all the radios I sell have got at least a little bit of charge in, so that when people receive them in the post, they can turn them on and have a fiddle. And this one I've forgotten to do. So it's a brand new radio and the batteries are flat. Well, that wouldn't be much cop if that happened to you when you needed help, would it? One of the things that I've been recommending to people who buy a radio for sort of occasional use and for emergencies are little radios like this. This little radio is very small, very simple. It's got very few controls on it. And it's also got one strange benefit. If I turn it round and open the back up, inside there are 5 AAA cells. They're rechargeables, obviously, and you put the waterproof door back over the back. And for most people, that is how they will use that radio, with those rechargeable cells. The beauty of this radio, if you're going to use it for emergencies only, is that you could stick in your boat an unopened packet of Duracell or one of the other brands long life batteries, you know, the ones that you go and buy from the shop and it says they expire in 2026, so 3 years from now. Now, you could open the back up, fish the rechargeable cells out that are flat because you forgot to charge them, and put 5 AAA cells in, call for help. That's the beauty of this one, that you could, with ordinary dry batteries, get this thing up and going in about a minute, and you could be calling for help. You can't do that with the others. The others all use battery packs of some kind. If I open the battery pack on this radio, you'll find inside a standard lithium-ion battery pack. You can't replace that with dry cells. So a radio like this one, which looks very similar to that other, cannot do that one essential thing. You can't fish it out of the cupboard or a store and put a set of batteries in it and be going instantly. You'd have to put this on charge. Now, that's a small feature, but it's quite important. And that's why I sell an awful lot of those ones to people like kayakers, because in this particular example, it's quite small too. So if you want something to stuff down the front of a wetsuit, well, there's a big difference in size here. So you could use that one, fully featured. This one got more gadgets, but realistically, that one's got a lot going for it. And it's also one of the cheaper radios that I sell. So that's why I sell a lot of those, I'm sure. It's a sort of, get one of those, keep it safe, it will get you out of trouble type radio. People often talk about brands. I frankly don't think any longer there is any real benefit in going with one particular brand or another. Some brands are historically more expensive. Now, you know, this ancient Icom, it's made in Japan. It was made very well back in the 80s and it's still working. I mean, I don't necessarily think we could promise that the current batch of radios, which are probably a third of the cost that was in 1980. That particular radio in 1980 was over £200. And in 1980, £200 was a huge amount of money. A radio like that you can get for under £100 really is cheap, isn't it? So what do you get as you go up in price? Well, the vast majority are just slightly different features, things that might suit one person more than another. Pretty well all these radios follow a standard pattern. We've got a keypad on the front, we've got displays that are nice and big, and you can read them nice and easily. That's a sort of common feature now. If I go back to this old Icom, the display is tiny. So the thing in that window, it says channel 16. It's really small. If you compare that with the other radio we just looked at, that small one with the rechargeable or dry battery option, the display on the Icom is tiny. The display on that cheaper one is much, much bigger. So that's easier to read from a distance than that one is. With that one, and certainly now when I wear glasses all the time, I mean, I've got to get sort of that close to check that I'm on the right channel. That one's much easier to see. So what other choices might there be for using radios? Well, if you work in a marina, then these radios with all the buttons and gadgets and things like that might be a bit of overkill if you want one to put in the pocket of your overalls. The nice thing about this radio is that the display appears through the front. So as you change, the radio display is there, and after a few seconds, it actually disappears. So a little radio like this is more chunky. It is actually waterproof, but its design feature really is that it's solid. If you drop this on the floor, it's going to end up getting scratched and tatty and things, but it'll keep going because it's a really rugged sort of commercial grade radio. You sell these sort of things to marinas or perhaps safety boats, things like that, where they're not going to be careful with the radios. And something that's nice and simple like that is likely to last longer. The thing with the Icoms is that they were pretty tough radios, and that's why this one still works, because it's really, really well made, really heavy, and I think the same thing applies to these. Other gadgets. Well, some of the radios have extra features. Some of the features are useful. This particular one has got a GPS unit built in, so it knows exactly where you are. On the rear of the radio, there is a small flap that says distress. You pull that down, and if you hold that little red button in for about 3 seconds, the radio will send out exactly where it is, what your MMSI number is, and that's really good from a safety point of view. But that radio is pretty much double the price of some of the others. The GPS facility is very useful. Is it essential? Well, no, not really. It also has other functions like DCS. So lots of the radios that you use that are fitted into a boat, the sort of mobile style ones with a hand mic, have DCS fitted. And it's a good system when you have perhaps a small fleet. So let's say there's you and 4 or 5 other people that you regularly go with. DCS is the sort of thing that can save you a little bit of time when you just want to call up one of your friends. I mean, normally, what do we do? Well, we'd probably call up on channel 16, call out the name of the boat, tell them to go to channel 6, and then we do it and we have the conversation. Well, if you've got DCS, you can send a message to all of your friends, or you can send a message to individual members of the group, and the radios will go to channel 6 for you once they've acknowledged they've received it. The process for actually using radios manually and then popping off to another channel is quite simple. So you'd call the boat. When they answer, you just say, channel 6. They say, Roger, and you disappear and you go to channel 6. So it's not actually that complicated to do without DCS. If you want one that's got GPS and it's got DCS, so you can do selective calling, well, this one will do the trick. If you've decided that you don't need the complication of that, and you just want a radio to talk to your friends, talk to the Coast Guard, maybe talk to the local port or the local lock if you want to arrange going through, get a bridge lifted, that sort of thing. I have to say that any of these radios will do that extremely well. So what are we really down to when we're talking about choosing a radio? Quite a few brands nowadays are actually made in the same factory. So you can have the strange thing where you've got perhaps 2 identical radios on the market. They're exactly the same radio. They're made in exactly the same factory and they've got 2 different brands on. That's very common now. But realistically, what are the differences? Well, size, weight, and the degree of waterproofness. Now, all of these ones are suitable that if they actually got submersed in water, they're not going to die. Now, some of them, these sort of things, if you drop them into the water, they will float. They also flash. The trim changes colour. So if it's at night time, you'll see this thing flashing in the water and you can retrieve it. If I use this radio, this any second radio that sort of, we sell a lot to marinas and things, and they go in workmen's pockets, things like that. But if you drop that in water, it's gone because it weighs a lot. There's no way this is going to float. But on the other hand, you could leave this out in the rain, it wouldn't cause any problems. And if you dropped it into shallow water, you could retrieve it and it'd be fine. But you're going to have to find it. The ones that float will actually obviously be easier. Pretty much most of these radios now do not have the knobs that this old ICOM has. On the top of this radio is a volume knob and a squelch knob. So you back this knob off, you turn the thing up until that noise stops, and now even weak signals will get through. Strong ones obviously do anyway, but just being able to do this and then just raise it slightly, that closes the squelch, and you're sitting just on the edge of the noise cutoff. So that's where it's going to be the most sensitive, and someone who's a little bit too far away will sort of poke through the squelch and you'll know that something's happening. You can then pick the radio up and perhaps find a better position for it. Now, most of these other radios don't have that. All of these other radios are controlled from the keypad. So if you want to turn the volume up on this particular one, there is no volume knob on the radio that you can turn. It doesn't exist. You actually press a button that's marked volume and up. And you can, on a scale of like 0 to 9, you've got 9 different volume levels. You can then press another button and it will adjust the squelch. So at one position it will be making the noise, turn it up and the squelch will stop. So that's the more modern way of doing it, and these radios work on that principle. None of these particular radios here have got a volume control on where you turn a knob. The exception is this one, which has a channel change on the top and a volume knob and a channel change. That's nice and simple. I think that's why a lot of the professional users like it, because you've got a volume knob that's also the on-off switch, and you've got a channel change. And that's pretty much it. It does have actually a few little buttons programmable on the side that could do certain things. And it's got a little red button on the top, which if you wanted could be programmed as a sort of an emergency button that would do certain features. I don't think many people ever use that. I certainly don't get asked to program it very often. So just for information, this one, the one that can have dry batteries fitted, we sell this under a couple of brand names. The Vitae VT20, the recent RS25, exactly the same radio, same price. We've still got some of these ICOM ICM 37s. I've been using a radio that looks like this since the ICOM ICM 35. There's 35s and 36s and then 37s, and they're rather nice radios. I do like them. Their battery arrangement on the back has got a nice big locking dial on here, so it's very rare that could be opened accidentally. I think that's a good feature. The waterproof pack that's inside is fairly normal, but to get the door open does require a coin or a screwdriver just to get the back off. So it is a bit of a sort of safety feature. If I look at this radio here, you'd be forgiven in thinking that it's virtually the same radio as the ICOM. And to be honest, yes, it is. The difference on the back of this one is the battery pack does have a pull-off thing. So if you left that slightly proud and didn't push it in properly, then that will let the water in. It's perfectly waterproof when that is properly shut. And from time to time you see people who may have accidentally opened that flap, or maybe they were a bit nosy and didn't shut it back up, and the little rubber O-rings that are in there to keep the water out can't work if it's not shut properly. So with a radio that has an openable rear without a tool, you just need to be a little bit more careful. This one again, it's another older ICOM. So that's the ICOM ICM 21 from one of their previous ranges. Pretty similar radio, and underneath it's got the screw that locks the battery, make sure it can't come off. This one, the recent RS38, is the one that has the GPS fitted, and the GPS function can be activated and it will tell you in the display where it is, and it does have on the back the little pull down flap. And this one, the Eniseco M360, which is the more rugged commercial version that we do quite a lot of. I quite like these, they're quite nice radios. And just for completeness, if you want to see that really ancient icon, well, there we go. It's an IC M5, and it's a bit old and beaten up. It's still a really nice radio. They did this particular radio in commercial business format. They did it in aviation, and they did it in a sort of ham radio format too. Really nice radio, and for the early 80s it was pretty good. Anyway, that's a quick look at some of the marine band radios that we have sitting here in the office, and I hope it's been reasonably useful. But realistically, it would be very unfair to say that the most expensive ones are better radios. They have more gadgets, they have more facilities, they have some of the clever stuff like GPS and DCS communications. But the cheapest one we have, I would honestly say, is just as reliable. And for some things like an emergency standby radio, maybe a spare, it's very, very hard to beat them. Anyway, that's today's episode, and no doubt I'll see you on the next one. Look after yourselves, take care, and if you like the video, please do the subscribe thing. It really does help. Take care, look after yourselves.